Of all the things that love is capable of doing for us, it is love that is expressed through forgiveness that has the power to make us whole. And this is especially true when a negative action or attitude causes a profound trauma in our life. I knew a woman whose name was Joanna, who told me that when she was only 13, at the end of World War II, she, her mother, and other residents of a small village in Germany were forcibly evicted by Russian soldiers. Now, even today, Joanna cannot speak or write about the horrors of that death march, other than to say that she and her mother experienced beatings and rape nightly. Through the 3 weeks of terror, and for many months after, her mother insisted that the two of them pray a rosary every evening for her tormentors. Joanna said to me, "I thought that those rosaries were the most ludicrous prayers that we could have ever said." And she would argue with her mother, asking why they had to pray for these soldiers, these cruel men. And her mother would simply answer, "Do you know of anyone who is more in need of prayer for their salvation than these three men?" Years later, Joanna recounted this story to a stranger whom she had met at a workshop she was attending on forgiveness. And the stranger became very serious, and he said, "You know, of course, that those rosaries saved your life. Those rosaries saved your life." Aside from the spiritual salvation of the prayers themselves, he pointed out that the ability of a victim to recover is often dependent upon the ability to let go of the hatred and the feelings of helplessness that come to us when we're deeply hurt. He reminded her that as you prayed for those who harmed you, you entered into the pain of their weakness. This is compassion. They needed the prayers of you and your mother in order to attain the greatest good that anyone can hope. And your prayers reversed the roles. Instead of you becoming the victim, you became the one who had power. And those who tried to press their power upon you were no longer a controlling force in your life. And finally, you no longer hated them. Your life was no longer preoccupied with their deeds. You were free to continue living. You're probably only now beginning to forgive them, and yet that has made and will make you whole. Joanna, like any child, was unable to see the wisdom that her mother was trying to impart upon her every night during that march. With the simplicity of the mind and heart of a child, she could only see that these soldiers were violating her. Her mother's exhortation to pray for those who were abusing her seemed ludicrous. Probably all Joanna could feel was the rage and desire for revenge. Her mother, though, because of her innate wisdom and deep faith, was able to look beyond the abusers and peer into her own heart and decide what would eventually bring her wholeness. And she discerned what was the best thing to do for herself, as well as what was the right thing to do. Joanna is now in her 70s and has gradually come to realize the wisdom passed on to her by her mother. She is not an eternally powerless victim anymore. Instead, she made the decision to be the master of her own spiritual and emotional life. Her decision has been a decision for life. Forgiveness, it's not a natural response. It's supernatural. It depends upon grace. As the English poet Alexander Pope once wrote, "To err is human, to forgive is divine." Once we decide to move toward forgiving someone, once we decide to take the pathway toward wholeness, it requires grace at every step of the way. And for me, there is no better fountain of grace, no better wellspring from which grace can come than praying the Rosary for the person we need and hopefully will want to forgive. It's a power bar of strength, giving us, over time, grace to move beyond our resentment, to see the other with eyes of compassion, and to begin to let go of a controlling force in our lives so that we can be free to live.